Hi, welcome back everybody. I'm so sorry. I need to plug in my laptop in order to continue this video. So sorry for the break in transmission. So let's go back to our work. This is our project here. So once you add something, it's kind of add up here, as I said before. Let me expand this. If you notice, this first one is make dinner. Second one is wash dishes, which is the default, the static one we actually kept on our web page, which is this. All right. So it will always be there. Okay, so now the subsequent ones are not the one that the user is entering. This goes shopping. Okay, let me just do something else like study. Let's add something else like study, and pick dates, pick time, and then add it up. If you can see, as you can see, it increased. The array length increased to 4. So when you open it, you're seeing this make dinners, which must be there, the wash dishes, the go shopping, and the study. So our code is really working. But something is there's something wrong. By the time we click on this add button, okay, this input field is supposed to just go off, like it's supposed to clear off. Okay, just like this our sample page. Let me put study here. Okay, and then select dates, select time. Once I add it up, are you seeing it's added up here and the input field kind of cleared off? So we need to do the same thing. All right, so let's go back to our page. We need to come here. So the only thing we need to do is that we need to equate this input value. Okay, this input element, we need to equate it to an empty string so we can be able to do what we needed to do. Yes, like, okay, what we're saying is that after you finish pushing, okay, go back to this targeted field, which is this input element, okay, and then equate the value because is the value we want to equate to an empty string. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm really communicating. So we're going to we're targeting each field first. We target the field first. Then in that field, we are telling it to equate the field value to an empty string. It should just clear off everything. Okay, I hope that is cleared enough. Do the same thing to the last one. Okay, dot value. Okay, sorry about that. Empty string. So let's save and see. Let's go back to our work and see if it works. So here, let me just put watch movies. Let's put the past date. And then let me add it up. And then here we have it here. It's added and it's cleared. Like the input field got cleared off and it's added here. Watch movies, make dinners, and the likes. Okay, so I guess we're cool. So, but then the problem is that we don't want these informations added on the console because our users cannot just go to the console to view what their to-do items are, okay? We want it to display on the web page just like this. This is what we want, not the console. So in order to do that, we'll be needing a function called, we can really call it any name that we want, but I guess this is more like a function work, a function duty to be able to help us render this information on a web page. Does that make sense? So as I said before, if you're going to reuse a code or going to do something over and over with a particular line of code, it's better to make it a function so you don't keep writing it over and over again. All right. So let's come here and say function. Let's call it function render to do. Render to do. Right? Yeah, render to do. It's okay that way. And then what do we want this function to do? We want it to actually render all the information that the user enters on the web page. How does it do that? Like we need to get the name, the go shopping, the date, the time, everything on a particular variable. We need to store it on a variable or something like that will help us to like the more they are entering, the more it will be going into that variable. Exactly. All right, we need to create a variable. So whenever they are entering this information, it will be going into that variable. Then we can now be able to display that variable on the web page. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. So let's start by saying let's just call it to-do list is really getting too much. To-do list HTML. Okay, yes, because this is the time we're going to inject our HTML file like inside our JavaScript code. Does that make sense? So for the first time, it's actually empty. Let's say the user have not done anything, so it has not really stored anything. It's empty. But another thing we need to do again is that we need something that will keep like going through the user the to-do list application or something to fetch everything the user is entering. We need something that will like be on on the run, like it's always constantly moving, in the sense that okay, a user can enter go shopping now, the next minute is entering something else. So we need something that will keep count keep account of what the user is entering. So that is better used with a loop statement. For example, we can use a for loop. We need something that, okay, go there, as user enter anything, pick it up, add it to this our to-do list HTML, go again, add it up. Like it keeps going round the clock. Okay, so we can use a for loop, and then we say let's I, which is the index, it can be called anything, be equals to 0. Okay, for the first time it's actually empty. The user have not really entered anything, and the index should be less than, we don't know what the user is going to enter, so we're going to make use of this our to-do list, this to-do list item, which is the object variable, right? Dot length. So this is telling us that whatever the user is entering, okay, get the length of it. That is, go shopping, that's number 1. Go this, do this, as much as the user is entering, keep fetching all of them for us. Okay, why is it less than the to-do list? Because we're starting from 0. Okay, as an array, we start an array from index 0. Okay, so if you're starting from 0, we're saying that there's nothing in the box yet. Okay, so keep fetching. So it's 0 down to whatever number the user is entering. That's what we're saying here. So you might really need to read a little more about loop statement or something like that. And then we need to increment this our index. Okay, this is saying that keep adding. Okay, the user add 1 now. Go and add it up to this to-do list HTML. The user adds 2, add it up to the to-do list HTML. I don't know if that makes sense. So that is the increment operator there. So inside this to-do list, okay, after you've informed this system to do this for us, okay, we need to actually store what the system is now getting, which is this to-do list array, which is I, right? Because by the time the system is getting this I++, where is it storing it? Inside this to-do list, which is this to-do list, but then array I, because now we don't know the number yet. That's why we're giving it the index I, right? So this is what we're getting from this line of code, right? But then we still need to, like, let's just assign it to a variable, so we don't need to keep making access to it, but access to the variable. Does that make sense? But then let's call it to do object, because now it's no longer one thing it's getting as much things as possible. Let's call it to do object. Does that make sense? So what we're saying is that this to do list, of all the to do lists you're going to be getting, this I++ together, okay, of this to do list, okay, store them inside this to do objects. I don't know if that makes sense. So subsequently, we've stored this thing inside the to do objects, okay, but then how do we now access? If you want to access one out of this, how do we access it? Like, I don't want everything. The user entered 5 items and everything is stored inside this to do object. I actually want to access one of the item, okay, to delete it or to mark it that it's been done. I want to access one. So then we need to, like, split them, that so you will know the one you want to access. What am I saying? We need to, like, give different variable name to different items for now. We kind of split them, but then we're going to access this item from the to do object, because everything is saved inside the to do object, and then we'll give it name. What am I saying here? I want this to do object. I want to go into this to do object using this dot notation. I want to go into this to do object and I want to get the name variable of an item inside this to do object. Then I want to store it inside the variable name. Does that make sense? I want to get the name value of this to do object and store it inside this variable name. Does that make sense at all? So that's what I want to do here. Okay, subsequently, I can keep doing for every other one, just like the due date. Okay, I want to get it from this to do object dot due date. Okay, that's a dot notation. You can read a little about it. It's used to access items inside an array or an object. We have the due time. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, due time. Okay, why am I still using the same variable name, due date, due time, due date? Because we actually need to be consistent. If you notice, we gave object name as a property, due date as a property, due time as a property. So we actually need to be consistent, so we don't, like, complicate issues for ourselves or for the system entirely. All right, so due time. So this is what I've got now. So what I'm saying is that inside this to do object, okay, access the due time for me. I want to access the name. I want to access the due date, all this information. That is what I want to access inside the to do object now. Does that make sense? But then, before I actually said something about the structuring. Okay, earlier I told you that the structuring can be used to merge two, like it can be used to merge items together or something. Okay, it can also be used like is how will I even put it? It's like a JavaScript concept that is used to extract properties. You can use to extract properties from an object, and then you can create variables with the same name as those of the properties. Okay, now if you notice, we have a variable called name, right? And then we are extracting this name, okay, which is the same name of the property from this object variable or something. I don't know. Yeah, object variable. Do we get that? So we can actually use the structuring assignments in this regard. Okay, what we are saying, okay, for example, let me code it out. Const, then I have name, I have due date, I have due time. Everything now is equating to this to do object. This is what I'm trying to do now. Okay, here now, this line of code, what it's telling us is that this to do object is the object, right? The object from which we want to extract these properties, name, due date, and due time. Okay, it means that now this name, due date, due time, they are like we are creating a variable, like we're creating this variable now, name, the due date, and due time, and then we are now assigning it to the value of the corresponding properties, which is this to do object dot name. That's the value, right, of the corresponding properties, to do date dot name and to do object dot, like that. So we are assigning this name, date, and this thing to the corresponding properties of these to do objects. Does that make sense? So it's having like name and also value. Like is the name, is the value, is the variable name. We're using this one const because it's const we use all through. So we're giving it constant, like this constant name, okay, is actually this to do object dot name. So it's accessing both the object name and is saving it inside the constant, the variable name. I guess that makes sense. Thank you very much. So easily I can clean these lines of code and then leave this one. Invariably, all this information, this one line of code is represented inside that 3 lines of code. Does that make sense? Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's keep going. On this same for loop, okay, now we've extracted each variable, okay, from this to do object as a whole, right? So what we want to do now, we want to inject this variable to our HTML. This is our HTML. We need an HTML folder that is empty. I just opened this. We created an empty div element. This empty div element, actually, we want to inject, like, see all these things we have here, all these wash dishes, go shopping, make dinners. We want to like inject it into this web page, into this our HTML, but then we want to inject it from the JavaScript. So we're not going to be writing all this thing manually. No, we're injecting it from the JavaScript. Does that make sense? So that's what we want to do here. It's called HTML generation. Yes. So you can just read a little about it. So that's what we want to do here. We want to inject it. Okay, so how do we inject it? We have something we call template literals. Okay, and we're going to use template literals and interpolation. They're just like processing, they're like process of it's like a process that we use to insert values to a string. That is what we call interpolation. Let me just go through it. Okay, if I'm really saying it, it will be as if I'm not making sense to myself. But when I start coding it out, I'm very sure that you guys would be able to understand better. Okay, so this is what we want to do here. So let's just create a variable. I'm always creating a variable because yes, it's better to actually use variable than be given everything randomly. Let's call it HTML. Yes, because this is what we want to use. So now we're going to use template literal, as I said, which is like a backtick. Okay, and then we'll terminate our code. This is a template literal because now we want to inject HTML inside our JavaScript, and you can read more about template literal. So we will not really take time. This video is getting longer. So when I enter it this way, I like simplifying my code so it will be much readable. I'm a lover of clean code. Yeah. So now what we want to do is that inside this empty div, we want to like inject so many divs inside. So why are we not even using a p tag here instead of div, instead of a whole container? That's because if you use a p here, a paragraph tag here, we cannot have a paragraph tag inside a paragraph tag. Like, does that make sense? Like, we cannot really have p inside a p tag. So we need and this HTML, this div tag will actually be much better. I'm sorry if you guys are really hearing some background noise. It's kind of rainy here, so I don't know. Please kindly bear with me if you're hearing some dropping noise or something. So we cannot use the P element here, okay, but you can decide to. It depends on whatever you want to do. But moreover, this paragraph elements, they have a default styling, CSS styling of padding or margin something. So we actually need something that will give us a neutral styling, then we can style it in the way we want. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. So let's keep going, please. Let's keep going. We don't really have that time. So now this is what we want to inject. So we want to inject different div tag. For example, let's say this a div, right? I'll just tab it here so it will be very much readable. So we want to have different div tag inside a div element. Like, yes, we want to make this a div tag, a div tag, a div tag continuously inside this div element as much as the user enters. Okay, but then we don't need to specify wash dishes, this one. No, we're going to use this name, due date, and due time that we've assigned to this to do objects. That's what we're going to be using here, and that's we're going to inject that using interpolation, as I said, which is a process of inserting values into a string. What am I talking about? Look at this. Look at what we have here. Like this particular symbol, this is what we call interpolation. We want to inject information inside. We want to inject value inside a string, inside an element. You can inject it inside even a console, wherever you want to. Once this thing is being used, it's called interpolation. Does that make sense? So what do we want to inject? We want to inject all these three items. This name, right? Sorry, guys, I'm really sorry if I'm taking time. I don't really want this video to be long. We've done part 1 already, so this part 2 shouldn't be that long. All right, I'm sorry. So let's keep going. So due time. So we want to inject these three inside this variable, and that is why we actually like kind of collated it together like this. This is what we want to inject. Okay, but then at each injection of this HTML, we have what we call a delete button. So we need to add that too, so we don't forget that. Let's just add it up. Delete. Sorry, it's actually a button that I'm supposed to specify, not delete. Button, and then we'll call it delete. Okay, this is what we want to do. But then on this delete button, we want it to be in such a way that if a user should click on the delete, right, on the delete button, it should delete all this information, right? All this information, the name, the due date, and the due time. And all this information is being entered into this to-do list.i, which is what we actually look through. Does that make sense? No, does that make sense? So on the click of it, that is what we want to do. We want to remove everything out. So we're going to use our onClick here, right? Which is equals to, right? So on the onClick, what do we want to do? We want this to-do list, Control C. We want this to-do list. We want it as a whole, right? This to-do list. But then we want to delete. We don't want, okay, this to-do list actually, it has all this information, all this, like as much, this to-do list as all the information that the user enters, like the name, the everything, right? For each, but then we want to delete for each of them, like the I. So we're going to specify. There's something we call splice. This video is really getting longer because I'm trying to explain deeper. I'm sorry if I'm unable to explain deeper. I really want this video to be short. I don't want it to be too long. Okay, so now we're going to use what we call splice method. This splice method actually helps us, like, is used in modifying content of an array. Okay, you can use to modify content of an array of an object. We use splice method to modify it by removing it or by adding. So you can use to remove, you can use it to add, but in our case we're actually like removing because it's like delete. Am I making sense? Excuse me, please. That's what this splice method does. So now we're using it to delete. So what do we want to delete? We don't really know what the user is going to click. The user might decide to click on the third item to delete. He might decide to click on the first one to delete. So here we're still going to make use of what we call the interpolation. We need to inject information in this, which is what? Which is the I, the index of our to-do list, which is this I. This I. this I. So whatever index the user enter, is it index 0, the item on index 0 is going to be deleted, which is the first item. Is it index 1? So subsequently, it keeps deleting like that. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So the item on index 0 is actually the first item, okay, because our index starts counting from 0 down to whichever number, the I. So this is what we want to delete. But then we want to delete just one item. So we're going to add one here. I don't know if I'm making sense. So let's just put this together. Let's just put this together. Let's put this together. So we want to delete one item, just one item. That is, we want to kind of remove one item starting from the index that has been specified in the value of I. So we're removing just one item from this I. So if the index that is specified is 5, so we're removing just one item from this item 5, that we're removing everything on 5, which is the list item. I don't know if I'm making sense, but when we run the code, we should be able to get it much better. So this is what we have here. Okay, so after this, now we've gotten this our HTML tag in place. Now we've injected this thing. We've injected this to our HTML. Okay, I don't know. Let's console log something and see. Let's see. Let me console log here. Let me see. Okay, this is 21 minutes already. Please, let's just continue. 21 minutes gone into the video already. Okay, so we've gotten it. Okay, let's just do everything. Okay, possibly if I still have time, I will explain each step one after the other. So we've gotten everything. So what we want to do is that we want to be adding all this information, both the delete, both the name, the due date. We want to be adding it here to this our to-do list HTML, because that's exactly the job of this HTML. Okay, all this is just to get all the information in a place, which we've done. So now we want to be adding it to it. So whenever a user should enter any item, you know, the item comprises of both name, both due date, due time, and also the button. It should add here. So it should display it on the web page. Does that make sense? So invariably, we're saying to-do list item, this to-do list HTML, right, will now be equals to, we can just do plus or minus, or in plus equals to, instead of doing it equals, we can just say plus equals to this our HTML constant here. Okay, I'm very sure this is clear enough. That's what we're doing. Okay, that's just the basic thing we're doing. We're adding all these HTML generated tags inside this to-do list item. Does it make sense? Yes, thank you. So now I guess we are okay now. But then we've gotten this thing generated already. So how do we now like put it there, like on the web page? How do we put it on the web page? Does that mean automatically is on the web page? No. So this is where we're not going to like get this information, this particular information right. Does that make sense? We're going to like get this information right. What do I mean? We're going to like come here. Let's give it a class name. We give this a class name, right? Let's just call it JavaScript to do dash list. Okay, yeah, because it's the one carrying everything. It's the one carrying everything. Okay, I guess we actually need to, let's just put this in a div tag or something. Let's put this in a div tag place. Guys, I don't know, let's kind of put this in a div tag so it will be much easier for us to access. Yeah, let's put this in a div tag. I don't know, so we can style it at once, but when we get the shell, we'll style it. Let's put this in a div tag so we know the div we're actually referring to. Let me just shift this to make it more readable. Okay, so this particular div tag, now this div tag, which is JS to do list, that is what we should inject there, because that is the empty div tag we want to inject, so that whenever a user click on something, click on the add button, it should add to this div tag that we have here. Does that make sense? Like it should add to this div tag that we have here. So to do list JS dash to do dash list, which is okay. So we can now come here. Let me control save. We can come here and then inject this. We can target this by using documents dot query selector. Don't forget I told you that for you to access elements inside your script, which is your JavaScript file, you need a query selector or whatever selector you want. So let's get this. So sorry. Let's get this. Where is it again? This. Come on. Let's get this. Okay. So this is what we actually want. We want to, like, we've targeted this empty div, right? This empty div, because that's where we want to be storing all the add items that the user is going to add, right? So now we're getting it, we've targeted it, but then what do we want to do with it? We want to, like, we want there's something we call inner HTML, that is the inner page, which is the page, the inner, which this page, this inner HTML, this, we don't have anything here. This is this here, whatever is supposed to be here that we don't have, because it's empty. That's what we're targeting. All right, so we want to target the inner HTML. We want to now make it what? We want to equate it to something that we've done, like this to-do list item, this to-do list HTML. That is what we're saying, is that the inner HTML, this div item, okay, how will I even say this? Like, it should display all this information, which is the to-do list HTML. I just hope this makes sense. So that is exactly what we are trying to do here. Okay, let's just try it. Let's just run this same. Let's just run this render to do. So we kind of like we had it up to our function. So what we're saying is that once this add button is being clicked, like, we should have this render to do, right? You should just, like, render this to do function. What I was saying, that once this add button, this add button is clicked, or once this information, this function is being run, okay, let it display this information. That is, we're calling this function. I mean, once this function is being run, let it display this function. That means we're calling this function inside this function to do. Does that make sense? I really hope this does make sense. Okay, and then we also need to, like, call it here. Yes, let's call it here too, because once the page is being loaded, let it run this function. That is, we're saying that once the page loads, whatever is on the to-do list should display. So for our own case, it should display this make dinner and this wash dishes automatically, right? If you don't call it here, that means if you have anything saved before, it will not display. All right, so we're calling it here. Let's just try it first and see. Let me save it first. So let's go here. Okay, are you guys seeing? So we've rendered it. That's what we're saying now. Like, we just rendered this information that we just did. We kind of generated this HTML, all right, and we add the HTML to this our empty to-do list HTML, right? And then we targeted this our empty div tag, and we added it up. We kind of injected it inside. We injected this HTML to-do list HTML, and then we kind of call the function. Does that make sense? Please, do I make sense? I mean, does it make sense? All right. Okay, so that is it. So let's just style and see what we're doing first. I guess the styling will bring out the beauty. So let's just go to our CSS styles, because now if we don't style it, we'll not really be able to see where we have issues. So let's just style it first. Okay, I'm very sure that we're conversant with CSS styling, so I may not really explain much on the CSS. Please just follow me as I do that. Let me change this to CSS so you can also suggest for me. Change it to CSS so it can be auto completing whatever I need. Font family, I want area. I want something like this. For the body tag, I want to design it on this font family area. Okay, then I actually want to design the okay, so I need to design this. Let me give it a class. I need to design this div. That is the container, the div container, which is the container that is housing everything. I need to design it to let me give it a class first. I can just call it to do grid. Yeah, let me call it grid, because we're going to use grid to style this. It's 30 minutes already. I'm so sorry, guys. I never intended that this thing is going to enter this long. Like, this video is going to be too long. I'm sorry. Okay, so that's it. So let me just style it. Let me just Ctrl save. Let me style this to do. What did I even call the name again? I'm so sorry. To do grid. Okay, so we can just give it a display grid because we actually want to display it in grid. All right, give it a grid template column. I don't know what do we give it. This is 1 2 3 4, so we need actually a 4 columns. 1 2 3 4. Okay, the first one should be bigger a little. This should be the same, this should be smaller. Okay, so let's just do it 200 pixel, right? 200 pixel, 150 pixel, 150 pixel, 150 pixel, and maybe 100 or something. Then maybe 100. So we're getting up. God, what did I do? Not grid templates columns. Yes, we needed 4 columns and we give it this width, column width size. Okay, does that make sense? Then we need a column gap. You can just give it 10 pixel. We need a row gap. Let's just give it gap will actually do this work. Instead of giving a column gap, row gap, everything should just be gap, right? Yes, and then we can also like align the item centers. Can use align item center. Does it make sense? Let's see what we have here. Did I target it well? Oh no, dots. See. Okay, so we still need to split all these ones. Okay, we still need to split this. Okay, let's go to our JavaScript file because we need to actually do something on this other one. Like we need to give it a class or something, the button, so it can split itself. Yes, let's give it a class, delete to do or something like that. Let's give it a class. This is our to do button, so it can just split. We just need to design everything. Let me just end this video here, guys, please. I don't want the video to be more than 30 minutes and it's getting really longer and tiring. I'm sorry, so let me just end it. We continue again.